everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Hormone Diaries. Today we are diving into all things sex, masturbation, relationshipy body stuff, and pregnancy so far. And this video is sponsored by Lelo, and I am excited to chat with you all about their new toy, the Lelo Enigma, and also my old favourite, the Lelo Sealer, later in the video. So I didn't really get into any of these topics in the first trimester vlog that was an hour long. Sorry, not sorry. So I wanted to have a chance to properly nerd out about all of the sex stuff and the body stuff in relation to the first trimester of pregnancy and how I've been feeling so far. Then we'll chat about some sex toys, and then I've got some questions from you that you guys asked on Instagram all about this, and I will do my best to answer as many as possible. So first up, let's talk about some of the changes, some of the differences that I have noticed in the world of sex for me. The first obvious thing is that the trying to conceive sex schedule is gone. Yay! And I know I made a whole video that was about how to keep sex fun and exciting when you are trying to conceive and how to make it not feel like a chore. And whilst the advice in that video is good, I stand by it. It doesn't always work. Or just the physical and emotional toil of trying to conceive, it still gets you down, and it's not going to be good all of the time. Even before I got pregnant, we'd already unintentionally reduced the amount that we were having sex because we were tired and finding it really difficult to get into it. There is only so long that you can really be, giving it your all. And then when I found out that I was pregnant, it was just whew, great. We don't have to have sex when we don't want to anymore. What a relief. And also one of the really good things was that it took a lot of the pressure off penis and vagina sex. So I don't know how long it was, but we went a very long time without having any penis and vagina sex after we found out that I was pregnant. But the intimacy wasn't gone. So it wasn't we'd stopped having sex entirely, depending on whatever your personal definition of sex is. So yeah, it was definitely a good lesson in penetrative sex and intimacy are not the same thing. But then first trimester symptoms hit me like a ton of bricks. And obviously I did not want to have sex because I was just exhausted all of the time and just feeling really nauseous. And when you're ill, when you're sick, at least for me, sex is just the last priority. It is just so far down the list. You're not in a sexy headspace. It's difficult to get horny, and then it's also just really difficult to muster any energy to have any kind of sex. But that being said, a miraculous thing happened, which was that when sex did happen, and when it did happen, it actually was often spontaneous. And I'm such a advocate for non-spontaneous sex, and also trying to break down this narrative that spontaneous sex is the best kind of sex, because often if you're just sat waiting around for spontaneous sex just to come out of nowhere, then you're not gonna have sex really that often, or as much as you would like to. But I think because neither of us were really pushing for it, or it wasn't on our agenda in terms of something that we wanted to do, but if we were in bed and then kissing and cuddling and I was tired or whatever, but then actually it was a case of one thing leading to another and then being oh, actually no, now I am in the mood, which is responsive desire, folks. In those moments, in the throes, in the heat of passion, my symptoms were gone, cured by sex. It's pleasure, the feelings of pleasure just overrode all of the shitty symptoms. It was great, just for a fleeting moment. But what that did do, at least the first time that it happened, it was a positive reinforcement. So it wasn't okay, now I want to try and have sex all the time to alleviate all of these symptoms. But it was if it felt like things were going in that direction, I wouldn't necessarily fight it. I'd be I'm gonna welcome this because I could potentially feel better for a while. and then go back to feeling like shit afterwards. Fun. But in general, and now that I'm also feeling a bit better and like have a bit more energy where I could have the headspace of like, I kind of fancy having sex. Oh, maybe I'll try and seduce my husband tonight. It's just like not there, but not in a like low libido, like why aren't I feeling horny kind of way. I'm just really chill. Like I used to have like this low level anxiety before we started trying to conceive of like, we're not having sex enough, like sex frequency and like relationship satisfaction, like how often do like normal couples have sex? And that's just so gone. And even though like before I knew the theory, like I'd read Come As You Are, I'd read Mind the Gap, I like knew in theory that it was about quality over quantity, but I didn't believe it. And now I'm like, so in. Like there's been a mental shift where actually like the sex is so good. It's not very often, but I do not care. But also one of the things that Dr. Karen Gurney talks about in her book Mind the Gap is sexual currency. And I love the idea of sexual currency, which is basically just like having a sexual relationship outside of like the physical act of sex. So it's like flirting with each other, treating each other as like a sexual being, as a potential sexual partner, feeling each other up, like kissing passionately, even if it's not going to lead to sex or anything like that. Like having sexual currency in a relationship, in a long-term relationship, is so good, and I think far more important than having like lots of actual sex. So yeah, very much welcoming the disappearance of the trying to conceive sex schedule and just being a lot more chill about sex these days. But on to masturbation. Here's the thing. During the first trimester, I was masturbating almost daily. But this wasn't necessarily because I was horny. It was because I was having trouble sleeping. So I was like using it to try and get to sleep, but then also using it as like, I'm feeling like shit. Maybe if I like masturbate and have an orgasm, it'll mask some of these symptoms. It didn't work as well as partnered sex in terms of masking symptoms. But yeah, I prescribed myself some masturbation for first trimester pregnancy. But also, it's just a good thing to like get that practice in for maybe later down the line when I'm trying to induce labor when I'm due. Just like induce labor with orgasms. We can do it. Okay, body stuff. Here's one thing that I didn't know was a pregnancy symptom. Tons of discharge. So much. Like, it's the creamy white stuff that you usually get. At least for me, it's similar to the same discharge that I would get in the lead up to ovulation. So not the like egg whitey stuff, the creamy white stuff, like dripping. Oh man, I love talking about discharge. But the cool thing is that you produce a lot of it to prevent any bacteria or infections getting up inside your womb. So we welcome it. Also, I've noticed that I've had more natural vaginal lubrication. And I know vaginal dryness could be also a symptom of pregnancy, but I don't know whether this is just like my discharge acting as extra lubrication, you know, just like joining in, just like, yeah, we can help too, guys. Maybe it's pregnancy hormones, or maybe it's actually related to what I was talking about before in terms of like having sex in a less pressurized way and actually it being something that my body is inviting, and I'm in a much more like relaxed state of mind, like no pressure, like, oh yeah, this is fun, this is nice, rather than like, we should have sex because we're trying to have a baby, or we should have sex because we haven't had sex in a while and that's what couples are supposed to do. And that kind of mentality doesn't lend itself very well to getting super wet. And so yeah, I don't know if it's pregnancy hormones or if it's more of the mental shift that I've had with sex that is helping the natural vaginal lubrication out, you know? There has been one area where there's been no change, and that is my nipple sensitivity, and I'm so sad. Still nothing from these guys. But as I mentioned, this video is sponsored by Lelo. I absolutely love their toys, and Lelo are all about decreasing stigma around female pleasure and celebrating it. So the woman who just admitted to almost masturbating daily, I actually was completely put off masturbating when I was younger because I thought that it wasn't for girls. I thought it wasn't something that people with vulvas did. And I didn't overcome a lot of that internalized shame until my early 20s. And shame is very much the enemy of pleasure. And Lelo are all about reducing shame and increasing people's pleasure. And actually, I had my first orgasm thanks to a sex toy. So honestly, these things are so great for self-discovery and sexual exploration. This one I've spoken about before. This is the Lelo Sealer, and it has become a personal fave. Like, I have my whole chest of sex toys, but then I also have in my bedside table my like top faves that I want to reach for. And since the last video that I did with Lelo where I talked about this toy, the Sealer has made her way to the bedside table, and she very much deserves that spot. It's just this like wide bit here for the clitoris, and the settings, the way that it builds. And actually, this toy, the Lelo Enigma, has the same build. So it's got 8 different pleasure modes, and I love this build. So it like starts out with a do, and then it gets a bit faster, and then it turns into the kind of like crescendo-y, like that's my favorite. And then it ends with just a and then obviously you can like change the intensity of it as well. I tend to just stick with whatever the toy was on when I first turn it on. I'm like, yeah, I don't even know if that's like bang in the middle, but I'm just like, that's good, we stay here. Yeah, and then it circles back round again. So things like this can be like great for edging as well, because as you like cycle through the different modes, at the end it doesn't like completely turn off, it just turns back to the first setting, and then you can like build your way back up again. But before I get into more of this toy, just a disclaimer: if you are pregnant, please get advice from a medical professional before using any toy, especially like an internal vibrating toy. For the most part, and for most people, sex and sex toys are safe to use during pregnancy, but every pregnancy is different. So please make sure to talk to your care team, your doctors, your midwives, and get medical advice before using one of these if you are pregnant. So this bad boy has dual action stimulation. So it's got this lovely little sucky bit for the clitoris, and it's Lelo's sensonic technology. So it like doesn't just focus on the clitoris, but sends sensations like throughout your entire vulva. And then it also has this G-spot stimulator as well. And I've said this before about other toys, but I like love toys that have like this joystick action in it. So this bit you insert into the vagina, and then this bit is on your clitoris, and then this bit you hold on to, and this is where the controls are. And there's just something so satisfying about like having a controller like this. But that's just me. Also, I love how flexible this is, because I've said this before about toys where it's like vaginal and clitoral, in that it doesn't always line up, and obviously every body is different. But because this is so flexible, I feel like there is a lot of versatility here for different bodies in terms of like where your vag and your clitoris sit. But this bit is still very sturdy. So it's like the neck of it that is flexible, and then this bit is still like sturdy how you want it. It is obviously extra soft, body safe silicone. I absolutely love this material, feels so good. And the Enigma is also waterproof, so you can have a bit of bath and shower play if you would like as well. Sexual pleasure and orgasms, if they are something that you are into, are just in general great for your physical and mental health. They are great for self-discovery and sexual exploration in terms of figuring out what you like and what your body can do. And I just love exciting new toys like this. If you want to find out more about the Lelo Enigma, then you can click the link in the description. And thank you so much to Lelo for sponsoring this video. And now onto your questions. I'm currently in the first trimester and libido has flatlined. Please tell me this is normal. Now, my answer is probably. I almost feel like if you experience any changes, whether like up or down to your libido during pregnancy, then it's all normal because the hormones are just like all over the place and your body is going through like such an extreme change. Obviously, if you are worried at all, then talk to your doctor, talk to your midwife, but it's not something that I personally would be worried about if I felt like my libido had completely flatlined. Are you both comfortable with having sex? We did it up to the week baby was born. Love that. Yeah, in theory. We are comfortable having sex. Obviously, I've only like just started showing now, so we've not really had to navigate the world of like sex with like a big pregnancy bump getting in the way. But for the most part, we're not like, oh no, be weird to have sex because there's a baby in there. Like, no. We're all good. Honestly, don't even think about the baby when having sex. How has you and Dan's relationship changed / evolved from trying to conceive to finding out that you are pregnant? So Dan and I did a whole episode of my podcast Doing It together, answering your questions that kind of probably go into more detail about that kind of thing. But just an overview, I don't really think like much has changed other than like how we relate to each other sexually. And then also in terms of our relationship dynamic, Dan has very much became my carer during first trimester and just cooking for me and like taking lots of my like house chores off my hands and being at my beck and call and, you know, just me being like, Dan, get me this, Dan, get me this. But in terms of like the core of our relationship, I don't think much has changed. How has your libido changed since becoming pregnant? So I don't think that like my actual sex drive has changed. But also, I made a whole video about how sex drive isn't a thing. But let me judge this perhaps on like how horny I feel and how often I feel horny. It's definitely increased since first trimester. So at the time of recording this, I'm 16 weeks pregnant. And so, yeah, I definitely have started to feel a bit more just like randomly horny. I'm a bit more just like generally interested in sex. But I don't really notice like a significant difference between like now and the ways that my libido would just ebb and flow and change and go through phases even before pregnancy. And I think that's like a really important thing to remember when it comes to sexual desire, is that it's not fixed. It's not this thing that is like, this is normal sexual desire, and then anything higher than that is like, whoa, careful there, and anything lower than that is like, oh, a bit broken, love. I don't think that's the case at all. I think like we all have sexual desire that is going to ebb and flow and change and go through fluctuations throughout our lifetime. And pregnancy is potentially like going to be one of those stages where your libido is going to change, but it also could change due to all sorts of other things, like other big life events like grief or moving house or just like stress at work. Like there are so many different things that can impact our sexual desire, and I think for me it's been really useful just accepting that everything when it comes to my sexual desire is a phase, and just kind of like treating it with curiosity rather than any judgment of like, oh, interesting, like my sexual desire is like kind of low right now. Right, we're in a low sexual desire phase. Cool. And then being like, oh, interesting, my sexual desire is like this now. How fascinating. Did you take a break when you no longer had to have sex together? Yes, but it was unintentional. It was just clearly what both of our bodies needed. We didn't like plan to be like, okay, right, now we don't have to have sex. It just, we didn't want to have sex, so we didn't have sex. What are some positive and negative effects your pregnancy has had on your relationship? This is an interesting question. I think positive thing is obviously we wanted this, we want to have a baby, and so it's just been like the best news, and we're very excited about like this next life stage for us as parents. Negative, I like want to say like just me feeling ill, but I actually don't think that that has actually had a negative impact on the relationship. Maybe just like in terms of our like personalities in general, even like before pregnancy and stuff, I'm the kind of person who likes to plan ahead and Dan is not. And so I'm, you know, quietly Googling lots of things and like learning about different things. But I know that Dan like is not ready to engage in those conversations with me yet. But I'm having a great time like learning all of these different things about like labor and birth and like postpartum and like actually like when baby is here and all of that kind of stuff. And so the way that I navigate that, and again, I don't actually see this as a negative thing because it's just our relationship dynamic. But I asked Dan the other day, I was like, at what stage are you going to be ready to start like making plans and doing things and getting everything in order so that we're prepared for like when baby gets here? And he told me January. So getting my lists in order. Is there anything you did differently in the month you conceived? Any tips for getting pregnant? I have no advice for getting pregnant other than like just have sex. You just do what you need to do, and then you just wait and see if it sticks. The bit that you have control over is getting sperm inside you, and then after that, good luck. But was there anything that we did different? Not intentionally. So we were having sex less. We were probably a bit less stressed out about it because, I don't know, we'd just kind of gotten to a stage where we're like, don't think it's gonna happen for us. Okay. So in the episode of the Hormone Diaries, I mentioned that the only sex that we had in the fertile window was an accidental withdrawal. But I double checked, and actually, so the accidental withdrawal happened like 2 or 3 days or something before ovulation, which is like a good time to be having sex. But then there was one other sex that we had that was like maybe like 5 or 6 days before ovulation. So either we got some like strong ones in there that were like, you know, survival. They were like up in the womb for like a good long time waiting for that egg to arrive, or some sneaky little bastards from the withdrawal time like got in. Honestly, you cannot predict this stuff. I found tracking my ovulation and doing my temperature every day really useful, just because I have a really irregular cycle, and so being able to track that like did make me feel a bit more in control and aware of what stage of the menstrual cycle I was in. I don't think that would work for everyone though, so I'm not gonna like give that as advice, but it helped me. Did you have any spotting? I had brown spotting after sex and it freaked me out. I actually haven't had any spotting, and I know that that is like a potential normal symptom in the first trimester, but no, I actually didn't even think about that. Like, I was fully expecting it, but no. Yeah, that never actually happened. This is a great question. Have orgasms felt different for you since getting pregnant? Is it easier / harder to achieve? Now, I've heard this for some people where like their orgasms get more intense during pregnancy, but I have not noticed a difference. Or if there is a difference, it's just like so subtle that, you know, it's unnoticeable, which is a real shame because I thought it could have been fun to experience a difference in my orgasms. Thank you so much for all of your questions, and thanks again to Lello for sponsoring this video. You can check out the link in the description. I would love to hear from you in the comments if you are pregnant or have been pregnant, and if you are willing to share some of your experiences and changes that you experienced around sex and masturbation and like bodily changes and all of that fun stuff. Like, do you get giggly when you talk about discharge as well? Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!